Greetings, Outlander. Gitshiver here, and today I have something very special to show you. Two special somethings, as a matter of fact. We've tracked down numerous Daedric artifacts, and a few Aedric artifacts as well. But these are our first Orbic artifacts. Some of the only ones in Morrowind, as a matter of fact. That means that these two relics come from the same stuff that the 9 Divines are made of, putting them multiple orders of creation up from the average equipment. Auriel's bow and shield are truly unique in the lore, and their impacts on the Elder Scrolls as a whole have been immense. There's still plenty more to be said about these relics, but let me show you how to add them to your own collection first. Then we can go into a bit more detail on these truly powerful items, and their impacts on Tamriel, and Morrowind in particular. Alright, let's go over the plan. So there are two ways we can go about this task. The first option is to locate our targets, both held by upstanding Dunmer in service to the combat forces of Almsivi, and eliminate said Dunmer, taking the resulting temple expulsion, bounty, and most likely extreme displeasure and annoyance of Vivek, Almalexia, and Sathasil on the chin, and get on with our day. Which, don't get me wrong, is a totally valid way of doing things. The temple will give you one free pass to rejoin, but only one, and bounties are manageable in their own way. If the tribunes themselves are bothered by it, they don't show it, so by all means, feel free to go for it. However, if you prefer to go about things in a more civilized way, you'll need to do a little prep work first. Like Kagranak himself, I've cooked up 3 tools to acquire some of the divine power at the heart of Vardenfell. First on the list is Ragemaker, a ring with a frenzy humanoid enchantment for 70 points on target. Like a turd in your cereal, this little ring is guaranteed to drive absolutely anyone to violence, which will be very important later on. Second, we'll need a way to undo the whole enraging normally cordial NPCs thing. For that, we have Peacemaker, with Calm Humanoid 30 points for 5 seconds, which is enough to break combat and enable dialogue. Then a quick bribe will be enough to make sure the target won't attack again. The last tool is my favorite one, Armor Eater. A ring with a disintegrate armor enchantment of 80 points per second for 5 seconds. It is on touch, so we'll have to be relatively close to use it, but it's a really handy tool for dismantling your opponent's armor mid-fight. In addition to those, anything you have that will help you sneak is definitely something to bring along, as we'll be making use of Morrowind's red-headed stepchild of skills, pickpocketing. I'm not going to get too far into the weeds today on how this system works or doesn't work, but suffice it to say that there's a reason you never hear about it or see anyone using it. I'll also be bringing along the Amulet of Shadows and the Ring of Chameleon for added stealthiness. Full disclosure, I trained my sneak skill up to 100 after attempting and failing this numerous times, and it is manageable now. But I seriously don't blame anyone for taking option 1 instead, if you don't want to invest that much time and effort. The good news is that both of our targets today are located in the same place, meaning that we don't have to do an excessive amount of traveling, outside actually getting to the location, of course. That part, however, can be a bit harrowing, as we need to make our way out into the ash-blighted, cliff-racer-infested fortification of Ghostgate. Don't get me wrong, Ghostgate and the Ghostfence are an incredibly significant feat of engineering, both magical and mundane, but you know you're in a bad neighborhood when even the Siltstriders don't come out here. That being said, the easiest way to get here is from Aldrune. If we head south through the wall behind the Fighters Guild, we'll come upon the main road. Turn left and follow this road south and east until you reach the Ghostfence itself. You can actually see where the road used to continue on into the hills overlooking Aldrune, but this was sealed off years ago, so we'll need to take the southern route to our right. When you reach the intersection, turn left and continue over the hill ahead. Once you pass over it, you'll see the Ghostgate Fortress on the left. The imposing gatehouse has 2 main buildings, the Tower of Dusk and the Tower of Dawn, each consisting of 3 floors, and each containing one of our targets on the top floor. We'll start on the left, with the Western Tower, appropriately named the Tower of Dusk, headquarters of the Buoyant Armigers. Head inside and around to the doorway on the inner wall. This area houses a simple shop and an inn with outrageous prices, but you can safely ignore them, as our target today can be found upstairs. The atrium here is full of fire fern and scathecraw, with some trauma root for aesthetics. But more interesting than that, Auriel's shield can be found adorning the arm or back of Draylin Linim. a high-ranking temple member and buoyant armiger. She'll never willingly part with the shield, thus the two options outlined earlier. Some sources say you need to force her outside before attempting this technique, but I didn't have any issue doing it right here. Just try not to enrage anyone else in the process. The first thing to do is save your game, obviously, but after that, we need to break out our Rage Maker and cast it directly in her face. She doesn't like that, so try to back away quickly as she'll start casting spells at you. Once she's out of magicka, she'll break out her Fireblade and the fabled shield. Then it's just a matter of pumping enough Armor Eater into her to break the shield, forcing her to unequip it. Disintegrate armor always hits the shield first, so it shouldn't take too long for it to drop. As soon as the shield breaks, swap to Peacemaker and get her calmed down. Don't forget to persuade her with a little bit of gold to get some disposition back. This should keep her from getting angry again. Now that the easy part is out of the way, it's time to actually retrieve Auriel's shield. Use some powerful chameleon effects. Again, I recommend the Amulet of Shadows and Ring of Surroundings. I have guides to those linked on screen and in the description if you need. Invisibility probably won't help, as the effect will break as soon as you interact with anything. But ultimately, your sneak skill will be the most important factor. Once you're as stealthy as you're gonna get, crouch behind Draylene, quick save, and activate her like a container. You should see the shield in her inventory. If you don't, reload and try again. It's weird sometimes. You'll most likely get caught the first time or two, but eventually the dice roll gods will smile on you, and you'll find yourself in possession of a shield worthy of warring gods. Nice job.
Walk with virtue, Outlander.
Now, before we get distracted, let's make our way back downstairs and around to the right side of the second floor hallway. There we'll find a short staircase and a door leading into the temple, which sits over the actual gate into Red Mountain. Across the room is an identical door leading into the Eastern Tower, the Tower of Dawn, command post of the Red Mountain Ordinator Detachment. Same directions as the last one. Head upstairs through the tower to the third floor atrium. Here we'll find Raylan Othravel, a high-ranking Ordinator. House Telvanni's mistress Thorana actually gives you a quest to do this very thing, and the rewards are pretty nice. You don't even have to be a member of the house to do it, but that's all beside the point for now. Unlike Draylene, Raylan does not keep the bow equipped, choosing to carry it in his inventory for safekeeping, so we can skip the disintegration this time and move straight into steal mode. Just like with the shield, this might take a little while, and it may not appear in his inventory every time, but eventually, you'll be able to grab it from him and find yourself holding one of the greatest weapons in Elder Scrolls lore. So let's take a look at our treasures. Auriel's shield is described as an ebony shield said to have once belonged to the elvish deity Auriel. It can make its wielder nigh invulnerable. In its resistance to fire and magic, Auriel's shield is unsurpassed. While Auriel's bow is said to appear as a modest elven longbow, but is one of the mightiest ever to exist in Tamriel's history. Allegedly created and used like its sister Auriel's shield by Auriel, the bow can turn any arrow into a missile of death and destruction. So you would imagine that both artifacts are absolutely dripping in divine power, right? But no, they aren't. Both of these relics, which are so consequential to the lore of the Elder Scrolls as a whole, and are known to have powerful enchantments, are essentially blank. Does that strike you as odd? I hope so, because it certainly did to me. As you've probably figured out by now by the remaining runtime, this isn't a regular artifact hunting video. You see, this problem has been driving me crazy for a while now, so I dove into the lore, reading everything I could get my hands on, and speaking to numerous NPCs to try to figure out exactly what was going on here. So if you're willing to follow a scrib into the dark forest of Elder Scrolls lore, put on your Dwimmerfoil hat and join me in diving into this Kwama hole as we try to make some sense of why Auriel's artifacts are suddenly so completely powerless. Before we dig in, as it were, I do want to say that lore is a tricky and often subjective thing in Elder Scrolls. Every event not directly witnessed by the player is subject to the whims of an unreliable narrator, meaning that "this book says this happened," or "that quest giver told me that was the cause," has the potential to suffer from elaboration, conjecture, and even outright fabrication. This is important to keep in mind, because we can be presented with conflicting narratives at times. I'll do my best to acknowledge any such conflicts that arise so that you can make your own judgments. On a similar note, I'm likewise prone to error on occasion, so if something I say doesn't sound quite right, or you have a different interpretation of the material, I would love to hear about it in the comments section. I also realize that a good deal of the topic is confusing, so I'll do my best to explain terms and concepts as we go. Don't feel dumb if you don't get it sometimes. None of us understand all of it, and if someone tells you they do, they're either lying or they're Drumora. So with those disclaimers out of the way, let's get on with it, shall we? A quick read-through of the UESP's database indicates that the shield and bow, like many of Tamriel's most ancient artifacts, have a mind of their own, a life, a personality, essentially a soul. The tales tell of epic battles being waged by wielders of these tools, only for the artifact to abandon their supposed master and flee the mortal plane, reappearing elsewhere at a time and place of their choosing, rested and refreshed. So they aren't mindless objects, like say a Daedric artifact, enslaved to their prince's beck and call and forced into the hands of whichever cultist or adventurer has the misfortune of said prince's favor at the moment. No, they choose where to be and when to be there. Ergo, logically, Auriel's bow and shield must either be at Ghostgate of their own free will, or against their will by some unknown mechanism. If these relics truly do have a degree of free will, why would they choose to be here, given what happened between Auriel and Lorkhan? Maybe I should start at the beginning. The Monomyth is a collection of Tamrielic origin stories found in-game. One of its tales, titled Heart of the World, is particularly relevant, and I feel like it will help everyone understand just how diametrically opposed the forces in today's investigation are. Anu is the original god of Elder Scrolls lore. He encompasses all things and is the quintessential form of stasis and order. Simple, right? Anu has an opposite as well, most often called Padme, the quintessential form of chaos and change. This next part is where the lore gets a bit brain-bendy. So, to extremely oversimplify things, Anu made Anuiel, who is described as the soul of Anu, while Padme created Sithis to be its soul, and the two really shouldn't be personified, as they're more like collective consciousnesses than individual beings. Okay, that's incredibly confusing, right? Well, since this is a video game lore exploration, let me explain it in terms of a video game. Picture this. A regular person wants to try out an MMO. We'll say their name is Anu. In order for Anu to play the game, he has to create an account. So Anu creates the username Anuiel. Now, Anu will never actually play as Anuiel, but Anuiel represents them in the world of the game at the highest level. Anuiel will then make characters within itself, and they will be the ones who actually interact to make up the game experience. It isn't a perfect analogy, of course, but it always helped me make some sense of things. Anyway, to get back to the story, Anuiel and Sithis both became many aspects through self-reflection. These aspects became the various Aedra, Daedra, and let's just say others, for time's sake, and all of them together are referred to as the Orbis. Everyone still with me? Good. Auriel was a notable spirit, having been given charge of time, so that all the spirits could get to work on schedule and not forget each other's birthday parties. To use our video game analogy from earlier, this guy was Anuiel's main character. Now you may have begun to notice a pattern in how divine metaphysics work. For every aspect or force, there's an equal but opposite aspect or force to oppose it. Well, Sithis' main character is the aspect of limitation, Lorkhan. Now, limitation may seem like an unusual choice for a being of chaos and change in the strictest definition, but it is creation with certitude, not the ever-stable, undying nature of the rest of the Arbus. Lorkhan brings with him the specter of death, finality, and inevitable change. And it's safe to assume he wasn't invited to many of those previously mentioned birthday parties. Despite that, Lorkhan either convinced or coerced many of the Anuic spirits to join him in a little project to build a place where the aspects of these aspects could live. A new game where characters make their own characters, to use our analogy one last time. The ones who signed up for this new game's Kickstarter and joined Lorkhan's little scheme became the Adata. This didn't pan out well for them, as all of their aspects, essentially the ancestors of elves at this point, were subject to the laws of nature and mortality. As they began to die off, Auriel pleaded with Anu to intervene. We aren't given much clarification on how this was done, whether they simply had to think the thought or scream in any general direction. But whatever the method, Anu declined to get involved, which is probably the best way to do the whole God of all existence job anyway. Anuiel, however, having somewhat of a bias towards its prime aspect, bestowed upon Auriel a shield and bow to defend the elven aspects of the Adada from the mannish aspects of Lorkhan. These same artifacts that we now hold were pulled directly from the Orbis, like that one loot crate drop that you know will absolutely change your game and totally justify the embarrassing amounts of money you spent in the crown shop. Not that I would know anything about that. Moving on. The edge they provided to the battle saw the elven forces brought to an equal footing with the forces of men. At the battle for now lost Old Elnafay, Trenimac, greatest knight of Auriel, knocked Lorkhan down in front of his army. And this part is just speculation, but I like to think he was using the shield's knockdown ability to do it. Either way, it is said that he reached into Lorkhan with more than hands to take the heart. What exactly he was reaching in with is a matter of some debate for another day. Maybe a bone saw or something. Whatever he was using did the trick though, as the forces of men were immediately disheartened and gave up the fight. They retrieved Lorkhan's body and retreated, cursing at the elves. Trenimac and Auriel then attempted to destroy the heart of Lorkhan, but it only laughed at them, saying, "This heart is the heart of the world, for one was made to satisfy the other." Likely annoyed but undeterred, Auriel instead fastened the heart to an arrow and fired it from his bow far to the east and into the sea, where no aspect of the new world may ever find it. So imagine his frustration when the damned thing went and grew a whole continent around itself in the eons after. And that is the abridged version of the story of creation according to the elves. I realize we went on a bit of a journey there, but hopefully that mess of divine soup that is the Dawn Era makes a little bit more sense now in general. But I primarily wished to illustrate just how odd the relic's presence so near the heart really is. They're primarily opposed to each other. The origin story of the shield and bow is the origin story of Red Mountain. To borrow a phrase, one was made to satisfy the other. Red Mountain is only the font of power that it is because of the heart of Lorkhan that lies beneath. It's the reason that the Dwemer disappeared, the reason the Tribunal have divine powers, the reason that the Ghostfence is necessary in the first place, and what put it there? Auriel's bow. So why would the agents of the Tribunal, objectively pro-heart of Lorkhan, Daedra-worshipping beings that they are, have command over the very weapons that were used, if unsuccessfully, in an attempt to destroy Lorkhan's power? Why are they here at the Ghostfence, so close to the heart, and not locked away deep beneath Mournhold or in the Clockwork City where they could be guarded? Given the many, and I mean many, failures of Ordinators, Armigers, and other Tribunal servants to safeguard powerful relics from the clutches of Dagoth-Ur over the centuries, it seems irresponsible to leave such things out in the open. Unless there's a reason that they simply must be here. Could it have something to do with the Ghostfence itself? While we don't know absolutely everything about this barrier, we do know that Ghostfences in general used to be a common sight in Morrowind. Dating back to the beginnings of Velothi culture, the Chimer, and later the Dunmer, buried their dead in family or clan tombs that were often surrounded by a magical fence, both to ward off any grave robbers and to keep any spirits or undead from escaping the tomb. You really don't need Grandpa showing up as a bone walker in the middle of Christmas dinner, after all. According to the Imperial Primer on Morrowind cultural practices, ancestors and the Dunmer, an ancestor may grant that part of his remains be retained to serve as a part of a Ghostfence, protecting the clan's shrine and family precincts. Such an arrangement is often part of the family member's will, that a knucklebone shall be saved out of his remains and incorporated with solemn magic and ceremony into a clan Ghostfence. In more exceptional cases, an entire skeleton or even a preserved corpse may be bound into a Ghostfence. These remains become a beacon and focus for ancestral spirits, and for the spirits of the remains in particular. The more remains used to make a Ghostfence, the more powerful the fence is, and the most powerful mortals in life have the most powerful remains. So the barriers are not just channeled magicka from Aetherius like a simple spell, they're powered by soul energy. Bear in mind, the tombs that were protected by these fences were small, at least in comparison to the entirety of Red Mountain. So it will come as no surprise that when the Great Ghostfence was created, bones from many of the heroes of the Velothi were dedicated to its empowerment, and the practice of private ghost fences was deemed to be selfish and fell out of favor. There is a degree of desperation between the lines here, but to fully appreciate it, we need to discuss the history of Ghostgate itself ever so briefly, as the conflict as a whole is a much broader topic deserving its own video. In Second Era 882, Dagothur and his Heartwights awakened from their slumber and ambushed the Tribunes when they came to the Heart Chamber for their annual spa day to rejuvenate their powers. Not expecting anyone else to be there, they were caught off guard by the risen Dagothur and forced to flee the Citadel. Over the next 433 years, various campaigns were launched to try and dislodge the Sixth House. But the Dwemer fortifications around the Heart were too well designed for the entrenched cadre of undying demons to be displaced. Even on the rare occasion that an incursion would be successful, any of Dagothur's forces that were killed in the attack would be reborn from the Heart in time. Now, I've seen it claimed there are conflicting dates given for the construction of the Great Ghostfence by various sources, but ancestors in the Dunmer note that the Great Ghostfence was already established by the time of its publication in the first years of the Third Era, while some bits of dialogue from Mournhold tell us that the years around Third Era 417 were referred to as the time of the Ghostfence. However, I would note that that statement does not necessarily imply that it was built at that time, only that there was some greater focus in the minds of the Tribunal towards the fortification of Red Mountain via the Ghostfence. What happened in the year Third Era 417 that would be so impactful? Well, it was the year that the centuries-long stalemate, which up until that point had been enough to keep Dagothur's influence from spreading, broke, and the Tribunal was dealt a major defeat. Almalexia and Sotha Sil were captured by Dagoth Ordos and Dagoth Vimin, who seized Sunder and Keening. Vivek was able to rescue the Tribunes, but was not able to recover the tools of Kagranak. After this time, Almalexia, Vivek, and Sotha Sil retreated to their individual capitals and went into isolation to hide the fact that their powers were beginning to fail, and most of what remained had to be dedicated to the Ghostfence, which was also beginning to weaken, allowing Dagothur's influence to slowly start creeping across the island. So as you see, the battle for the Heart has been a fierce one for centuries, and the Tribunal find themselves in a very precarious position. Enough to take drastic action with divine forces beyond their station? Potentially, but these are Arbic artifacts, not dead Dunmer after all. No ordinary soul trap is gonna work here. Is such a thing even possible, and how would that work exactly? Well, we know from in-game books and later Elder Scrolls games that Necrom, the City of the Dead, is a grand mausoleum complex on mainland Morrowind's eastern coast, whose burial vaults are piled deep with the bodies of countless fallen Dark Elves, and that this, along with a portion of Almsivi's power, somehow maintains the Great Ghostfence. But how is that done? This is where our information begins to trail off into some uncertainty, as no canon source clearly delineates the exact processes at work here. All is not lost, however, as a possible answer may be found with the help of Tamriel Rebuilt. While it's not officially canon, the scholars behind the completion of Bethesda's original vision for Morrowind do great work interpreting the information left to them in-universe, and the works of former Bethesda developers and writers to fill in the gaps. So take everything we're about to discuss regarding Necrom with a grain of salt, but it is as good an answer as we're ever likely to get. In Tamriel Rebuilt, City of Necrom, below a grand chapel named the Fane of the Ancestors, is a door guarded by two ordinators in mourning, the unnerving ash-faced defenders of the dead. Many of the catacombs below this temple complex are freely open to the public, but this cordoned-off door has a lock level of 110, which is highly unusual on its own. But if you were to somehow find yourself in this vault, you would discover a circular room with Dunmer remains around the outer wall and some sort of sigil carved into the floor. Following the staircase down leads to a second vault door, but this one requires 3 keys to open. The lock bears the triangular seal of Almsevi, so it's my belief that these keys are held by the tribunes themselves, indicating something of great importance behind this door. The first lock is level 110, and if you were to somehow disable it, you would receive the message, "You pry open the lock marked A," indicating that there's no legitimate way that you could have unlocked it normally. The second lock is level 120, and says, "You pry open the lock marked S." The final lock is level 130, and is similarly marked as lock V with the same message. And with the final lock bypassed, the door opens to reveal a device that I cannot fully identify, but I'll give it my best shot, as I do have some interesting ideas about it. The uppermost component looks similar to the Eye of Magnus from Skyrim's College of Winterhold questline, but in its open form. While several hours of research failed to provide any satisfactory explanation of exactly what we're looking at, I am confident in saying that it is a magical confluence of some fashion, likely the part of the device that actually sends the magical energies to the Ghostfence, and I'll leave it at that. This sphere of flying triangles is being fed by a stream of particles coming up from below. The staircase at the back leads down to a machine that I can only describe as an ingenium. If you aren't familiar with the term, I can't blame you. It's a rare thing to come across, as the only other instance we have for such a device comes from Greg Key's official Elder Scrolls novels, where a deal was struck with Clavicus Vile to acquire such a device. It was then employed by the Tribunal Temple after the disappearance of Vivec to keep Baldur aloft, and players of Skyrim's Dragonborn DLC will know how well that turned out for everyone. Though I'm sure at this time, the residents of Vivec were much relieved at the bargain. Nothing from one of Vile's deals is ever quite what you asked for. The ingenium he provided required sacrifices, specifically Dunmer souls. It's essentially a tool to focus and transmit this soul energy towards enchantments that need way more juice than any single soul, even that of a god, could ever cover. This device, ingenium or not, consists of 3 plinths around a central conduit of some kind, pulling from a clockwork gear system in the crucible beneath this undercroft. Each plinth is marked with a sigil. AM for Almalexia, Set for Sotasil, and Vec for Vivec. On each side between the plinths is the old Elnifex word A, meaning life or is. So it's my belief that this is the mechanism by which the Tribunal's power and that of countless Dunmer spirits is transferred into the Ghostgate. The contributions of each of the tribunes is quite interesting as well, as each plinth has a reliquary compartment. They will not open, but if you were to peer inside, you might be surprised at what you see. Inside of AM, we find a lock of Lady Almalexia's hair, while Set gave his leg bones, which sounds like a raw deal to me. But Vec's reliquary has much more interesting connotations, and is why we came all this way in the first place. In here is the legendary spear Muatra. If you know your lore, which you probably do if you actually stuck around this long, Muatra is no ordinary weapon. It's actually the phallus of Molag Bal, bitten off by Vivec after their wedding night and crafted into a weapon. So A, ow, and B, that's disgusting. But C, that gives us an example of a physical manifestation of divine energy being used as a power source for the Ghostfence. The lore and quest for this area have not been revealed to the public yet, so this is all very speculative, but very telling for what it is. The clockworks below the plinth, in the middle, are well within the skill set of one Sotasil, but we know that his abilities were not absolute, and his command over this level of magic may not have been enough to work the actual enchantments, seeing as his plan to create an artificial heart never bore any meaningful results either. No, the part on top feels like a different thing altogether to me. This could be the linchpin to the whole process, and it smacks of Daedric involvement. One prince in particular, whose calling card has been in our faces the entire time. Azura. Azura hasn't directly come up in this tale yet. To be fair, that's mostly due to the tailored scope that I chose to use, as most of it was not directly tied to the prince. But let's open the door and let the goddess of dawn and dusk have her due. The most obvious thing would be the towers of Ghostgate themselves, dawn and dusk. No one in-game mentions the connection, but it's hard to imagine that this was an accident. Perhaps Almsivi chose to name the towers in her honor as some sort of apology, or at the very least, an acknowledgement of her primal authority over doors and barriers. An authority which, if the Khajiit mythologies are to be believed, comes from her mother, Padme, or Padme as we would call her. Since the Khajiit are fond of using family allegory in discussing such matters, we'll take it up for a moment to illustrate some other interesting connections. You see, Azura was the favored daughter of Fadomai, who was slain by her maid Anur. Before she died, Fadomai instructed Azura in all of the secrets of creation, and named Azura as a sort of caretaker and overseer. Back in the monomyth, we learned that Lorkhan was the chosen son, and now we see that Azura is the chosen daughter, and it is said that she loved her mother and her brother very much. It has also been indicated that it may have been Azura's design, not Boethia's, which set the Chimer on the path to separate themselves from the Aldmer, ultimately leading them to the star-wounded east and the heart of her fallen brother. Khajiit mythology goes on to tell us that Azura crafted the ether prism from Magnus's second eye, which is what causes the sun to rise and set, opening the Varliance gate at dawn and closing it at dusk. So connected are the two, that the sun is sometimes called Azura's third eye. And what artifact is Azura best known for? Azura's star, an inexhaustible soul gem, so working with large amounts of magical energies to erect barriers is well within her abilities. Remember also that it was Azura who appeared before the tribunal after desecrating the heart, and cursed them and all of the Chimer for their sacrilege. Azura is the first voice we hear in Morrowind, and also the first to acknowledge the destruction of Degathur, and the removal of the heart from Mundus. Kind of a lot of connections for it to be a coincidence, right? Regardless of how she may feel about the tribunal and their abuses of the heart, Degathur's abuses seem to offend her even more, and in our interactions with the prince, she comes across as very adamant that he be defeated at all costs. So we have motive, means, and opportunity for her to be involved, whether the tribunal would ever actually admit to such a thing or not. And that is where I expected this line of inquiry to end. But recently, I was able to sit down with one of the developers of Tamriel Rebuilt to ask a few questions, and was rewarded with some very interesting information about their take on Necrom and Azura's potential involvement. Shout out to Jackamoff Wackamoff for taking the time to speak to me, and for digging through the archives. As it turns out, from the very earliest days of Necrom's development, the Fane of the Ancestors was designed with the prince in mind. If we look at the concept art for the building, we can see that it was designed to look like a certain orifice. The architecture is essentially one of Azura's many gates, ushering spirits into the womb of her undercroft to be born anew into the Ghostfence. We were correct in our basic understanding of this machine, which predates Greg Key's Ingenium, by the way. It receives the spirits of Dunmer interred at the site and focuses them, along with Almsivi's various offerings, into the Great Ghostfence via unknown magics. As to Azura's actual involvement, it was a mixed bag. The proper workings of the machine are an enigma to all on Nirn save for Sothasil, but looking around the temple at the Fane of the Ancestors reveals a hint. One you might never pick up on without it being pointed out. If we look at Set's shrine, we will see that Azura is standing over his shoulder, guiding him. This shrine represents Azura leading the Dunmer to the Sacred East, to Morrowind. But the Prince of Dawn and Dusk guides Sothasil in other ways as well. If we read the shrine, it will tell us that the true ambition of the Houses of Aloth is to uphold the ideals of the Endeavor in spite of all adversity, profane or divine. The Endeavor here being the continuation of Dunmeri culture and the survival of its people as a whole. The ending of the inscription is suspiciously significant. In spite of all adversity, profane or divine. Profane adversity like Degathur, or divine adversity like Almsivi's theft of power from the heart. This inscription carries the weight of a secret pact between Almsivi and Azura, that no matter what happens, what offense is given, what affront is made, all parties will work together to protect the Dunmeri people and culture for all time, by whatever means necessary, even though neither side would publicly acknowledge the alliance. but the means necessary may be far darker than you might expect. The next bit I'm going to talk about requires a major spoiler warning for Tamriel Rebuilt's Tribunal Temple. If you don't want to know, there's a time code on screen now that should be a safe point to skip to. Back in our reading of Ancestors and the Dunmer, we learned that upon their death, Dunmer used to contribute a portion of their souls for temporary service to the defense of their family or clan burial site. But the machine at Necrom works a little bit differently. It is referred to internally as the Soul Shredder, because souls go in their entirety, and they don't come out, save to proceed into the Great Ghostfence. Every Dunmer who has died and been interred at Necrom for the past 4 centuries is gone, not just physically dead, but devoured, consumed by the endless needs of the Ghostfence. To the best of our knowledge, nothing of the spirit remains. Maybe if they're lucky, their consciousnesses end up in the Soul Cairn. At least Jib would have plenty of company then. This information really underscores how bad the situation is. The Great Ghostfence requires even more energy than I had initially believed, and since the machine is capable of absorbing the divine energies of artifacts like Muatra, it isn't out of the question that something similar is happening to Auriel's bow and shield, though the TR team has not inferred any direct connections that I'm aware of. Okay, that was a lot of information, I know, but stick with me, we're almost done. There's one possibility that we haven't covered yet. I feel relatively confident that we have a good understanding of the mechanics at play here, but we may have been interpreting the situation incorrectly. If the bow and shield have a will of their own, and they're found at the burial site of their master's greatest enemy, whom destructive forces are attempting to revive in some capacity, isn't it possible that they are in fact here by choice and are channeling their powers into the Ghostfence of their own free will? Could they sense the quickening beat of the doom drum, and travel literally across the continent from the Iliac Bay to stand and fight? They are certainly capable of it. The drained state of these artifacts, or in fact the greatly diminished condition of many of Tamriel's greatest artifacts as seen in Morrowind, could also be due to some unforeseen consequence with the Ghostfence's enchantments, or even the rising power of the Heart of Lorkhan itself. But unfortunately, that is where the trail goes cold. We now know that the Tribunal have been more or less on the back foot with Dagoth Ur for quite some time, but in the last few decades, that imbalance has become more dire. While they try to send assurances to their people, many armigers, ordinators, and temple officials know the situation is worse than they're being told, and likely near a breaking point. All indications are that weapons imbued with divine energy can be redirected to other purposes, like with Muatra. And given the worsening situation, I'm sure any large source of power would be a welcome ally, be it Daedric or Adric. Who commanded that they be brought to the Ghostfence in the first place? Vivek? Azura? Did they come here on their own? Impossible to say with the information we have, but I'm willing to bet that whoever it was knows exactly why the bow and shield are currently mere shadows of their former selves. So I'm left with one of two thoughts. One, that the Tribunal, Azura, or their agents took it upon themselves to locate these artifacts and somehow bind them to the towers they inhabit, funneling their energies into the Ghostfence directly. Or that the situation is so dire that the artifacts themselves chose to contribute to the fight. One way or the other, something's going on here. Maybe one day we'll get a solid answer, but for now, let me know in the comments what you think it is. I will admit, I may have lost a bit of my sanity digging so deep into this, but hopefully I was able to bring you some new information and give you a few questions about the topic to dwell on. This video was a bit different from my normal routine, but it was honestly a lot of fun to research and produce, so I hope you enjoyed it. As always, if you learned something or found it entertaining, please do hit that like button and consider subscribing for more. I've been Gitshiver. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.